I want to go now to Abby Phillip, anchor of CNN's Inside Politics Sunday, and Shan Wu, former federal prosecutor. So, Shan, let me start with you. These fake election certifications, from what you know, do you believe there's enough evidence for the Justice Department to actually file criminal charges over them?
Well, we don't know that much about it, Aaron, at this point, but certainly facially it sounds like it could violate both state election and fraud laws as well as federal ones. And as Evan's reporting points out, it is very, very significant that Lisa Monaco, the number 2 at the Justice Department, made this statement. I had worked with Lisa closely when we both worked for former Attorney General Reno, and she's very, very careful with how she acts and how she talks. So her phrase there, ongoing investigations, is a very, very significant phrase.
Right. She didn't just say it lightly or, because she realized she misspoke. It was done carefully. So, Abby, does any of this give Trump pause in his political reemergence, right? This is getting at the heart of what Rudy Giuliani was pushing, right, to overturn the election in 7 states that Trump lost.
Yeah, I really don't think that Trump is very much fazed by any of this, nor are his most ardent supporters. One of the interesting things is hearing just a few days ago that one of the characters in this terrible saga, Boris Epstein, basically shrugging this off and admitting that this was actually their plan. And the reason for that is because these are people who truly believe these lies and truly believed at the time that this was a legitimate thing for them to do. Now, that doesn't change that this may very well be charged as fraud and that they could be facing real legal jeopardy for all of this. But I think that the reality is that facts have never gotten in the way of these people pushing these lies and believing them fervently. And I don't think that it will really affect former President Trump's thinking on his own political future or on whether or not he wants to advise his people to cooperate with any of these investigations, whether on Capitol Hill or elsewhere, at the Justice Department or at the state level.
So, Shan, sources with direct knowledge of this, what happened here, tell CNN that Rudy Giuliani was the leader of the efforts to put forward these illegitimate electors in the states Trump lost, and that he coordinated at a state-by-state level, right? So he was the leader, and he was micromanaging it, all the details. So when the January 6th committee announced that it was subpoenaing Giuliani, it cited a hearing in Michigan where he said this.
I would never certify an election or have my name associated with anything that was false. Now, it is your responsibility to do that. The power is given to you. In the McPherson case in 1892, the United States Supreme Court made clear that you can take that power back any time you want to. Yes. Anytime. You can take it back tonight. You can take it back the day before the electors go down to Washington. You can take it back anytime you want.
What do you take away from that, Shan, and how concerned Rudy Giuliani should be now legally?
He should be very worried legally. He says that, quote, he wouldn't associate himself with anything false, and there he is doing exactly that. And these evidence is coming out that he was in charge of this. His own representations of his role sounds like he is a mastermind, a key player. That's going to be a big problem for him here. There may be some defenses down the road claiming that some of these documents have some disclaimers on them. But overall, if the department is looking at this and they're going to charge the whole kit and caboodle. They're not going to parse it out. And I would be very surprised if he's not charged, frankly, if this continues in this direction.
So you've got what's going on at the DOJ, and Abby, of course, then you have the January 6th committee. Alex Jones, and anyone who doesn't know his name, he's one of those who helped push the big lie on his show InfoWars. He revealed he met with the January 6th committee yesterday. Now, he says he took the fifth almost 100 times, right? So making it clear he wanted nothing to do with him, wouldn't answer their questions. However, he then also said this.
I just had a very intense experience being interrogated by the January 6th committee lawyers. They were polite, but they were dogged. The questions were overall pretty reasonable. They have everything that's already on my phones and things, because I saw my text messages to Caroline Wren and Cindy Shafian and some of the event organizers right there. So they already have everything.
You know, it's amazing, Abby, that Trump and his allies have tried to discredit the committee, right? Say it's a fraud and a sham, right? Newt Gingrich saying that they should be the ones to be indicted. But, you know, anyone that I've talked to who's been in front of that committee, and I'm talking about specifically Republicans, have talked about how professional it is. And Alex Jones, who says he takes the Fifth and wants nothing to do with it, admits he's impressed by their investigative work and their professionalism.
Honestly, Aaron, he sounds kind of shaken in that clip about the experience overall. And it seems to be partly because he maybe wasn't expecting there to be that much detail, wasn't expecting his text messages and documents to already be in their possession. And he talked a lot about pleading the Fifth and doing so because he was concerned that he would be sort of incriminated based on his inability to recollect things completely accurately. But I think that what he's trying to convey to his supporters is that he didn't plead the Fifth because he had something to hide. He's trying to signal to them that he wasn't necessarily hiding. But I do think that many of these individuals really are worried at this point because they were so knee-deep into something that turned out to be quite violent, and many of them don't know what that means for their own legal jeopardy.
Right. I remember the Republican Secretary of State for Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, he told me when he went in there, he said they asked the questions. They already knew the answer to every single one. They already had the text. They already had it. They'd done their work. All right, thank you both very much.
Good to see you.
And now